Hi, you're here with Coach Chris. G'day, welcome. Welcome to the people that have been following our Facebook Live program. I'm Coach Chris from Lighthouse Leadership, Psychology and Training, and we're in the middle of a boundaries series. We're looking at what makes boundaries work really well. And so boundaries are the things in your life that you say yes to and no to. And it's through the use of our boundaries that we create really healthy relationships. And we've been following through a number of questions. I'll let you catch up on the previous episodes if you're joining us up. Today I was going to show you a boundary model, but I've decided to skip that because I think there's some more really foundational things we need to cover first. And today I want to speak about what a boundary is and what a boundary is not. I was reading this really interesting story, and it was a lady who had decided that she was giving up on this relationship. And so to start, she was going to put in some boundaries and she was leaving this relationship. And that was her first boundary. I'm like, that's not a boundary. That's you leaving. A boundary only exists when you're in relationship. So hello to those who are coming online there. Great to have you with us. So Coach Chris here. We're just talking about what a boundary is and what a boundary is not. And so this lady was leaving this relationship and she was calling it a boundary, but a boundary is not leaving a relationship. A boundary is what you do when you're in the relationship. So if there's no relationship, there's no boundaries. Just by definition, a boundary is a limit that you put when you are in a relationship. And so the other thing that you need to be aware of with a boundary is not what you say the other person has to do. That's called control. And so it is really important to understand the difference between control and a boundary. And so if you're in a relationship and your understanding of setting boundaries is telling the other person what they need to do because all of this bad stuff is happening to you, then that's not a boundary. It's unenforceable. If you say to somebody else, like if I said to my wife, okay, you can't do this anymore, well, that's actually unenforceable because it's not my responsibility to be in charge of her. She's in charge of herself, but I am in charge of me. And so a boundary is when I say what I'm going to do in a relationship. So for this lady who left this relationship, an example of a boundary there would be, okay, boyfriend, if you're going to keep doing this, then I am going to do that. That's what a boundary sounds like. And it's not her trying to control and saying, you can't do that anymore. If you do that anymore, then just putting all the blame on him and it's all his fault. That's not what a boundary is. A really healthy boundary is when you say what you're going to do. And so this is really important because boundaries are not about forcing other people to do things. It's about you choosing your yes and your no. And like I said, if you're not choosing your yes and your no, this is our first question. If you're not choosing your yes and your no, somebody else probably is, and you might not like what they're saying. So just drop this down a bit, get the sun out of the background. So those two things I want you to be aware of. I want you to be aware of. Boundaries only exist if there's a relationship. And if you're not in relationship, then there are no boundaries. So boundaries are what you do in a relationship. And the second thing is a boundary is not about control. It's about you saying what you're going to do. And so self-control is the essence of boundaries. Okay, so if you have scriptural understanding, you'll know that some of the fruit that we're after in relationships starts with love and ends with self-control. This beautiful list of fruit. So for those of you who know what I'm saying, you know what I mean. So love and self-control need to be together. If there's no self-control, then you compromise on love. So a boundary is about the control that you're going to have over yourself and saying what you are and what you're not going to do. So I want to leave you with that to think about. This is Coach Chris from Lighthouse Leadership, Psychology and Training. Great to be with you today.